Hey people! The question we want to ask today is it really important for a musician to know how to read music? Yes. No, wait. What I wanted to say is this. Yes, that's a very good question, and we have to be very careful in answering it. Because there are many different traditions and many different styles of music in which being able to read music has a very different importance. So, for a classical musician, for example, the question doesn't even arise. I look at the topic from the point of view of a drummer, active in pop, rock, heavy metal and jazz music, and I want to shed light on the different arguments. So, I trust that you are able to transfer these arguments to your specific situation, your instrument, your style of music, and that you can weigh the different arguments which are more important for you and which are not, so that you can come to your personal conclusion. Before we look at the benefits of reading music, I want to address a few criticisms which often arise in this context. And the first is this. Often many accomplished or famous musicians are mentioned and people say, well, he or she also didn't know how to read music. Unfortunately, this often just sounds like a bad excuse. Also, the fact that a person accomplished something in spite of the lack of a certain skill, that does not mean that this skill is not important. But still, I have a few counter-arguments. Number one, for every accomplished musician not able to read or write music, you can find another one who is able to read or write music. Also, these musicians can, to some extent, probably credit their accomplishments to their skill of reading or writing music. And on the other hand, the musicians who were not able to read or write music, they made their accomplishments in spite of not being able to read or write music. Number two, if someone says Jimi Hendrix also didn't read music, I answer, that's correct. But are you Jimi Hendrix? And much more important, do you want to be Jimi Hendrix? Don't you rather want to take advantage of all the possibilities to become the best musician you can be? Number three, could it be possible that these musicians mentioned would have reached the same level of success or written even more songs if they had been able to read or write music? There are many famous musicians who lack the skill and who regret it. Even Dennis Chambers, who does not read music, is able to do so and also recommends to everyone to learn and practice this skill. One of the most common criticisms of reading music is that it kills creativity, but I disagree. If you learn by ear, you just mimic what others already played, so you just memorize it. But if you systematically learn exercises, you get to know the small and the large building blocks and learn to build them together again. And that is creativity. Many very creative musicians learned their instrument very systematically. One of the most methodical musicians I know is at the same time one of the most creative, Benny Greb. And his book, The Language of Drumming, is very systematical. It gives you very small building blocks and then you learn how to add them together so you can express your feelings, your emotions. So that's very creative and very methodical at the same time. But of course I understand the criticism. If you just stick to the notes, maybe you forget to listen and you neglect the feeling of the music. I definitely see this danger when just learning through notes. So we have to see the notes as an interface which communicates efficiently what should be played. After that, your ears should be the most important corrective. Many creative people feel constrained by certain systems, like for example the system of music notation. But this is not an argument against the system. It just tells us something about the personality and the perception of those individuals, those musicians. The system is neither good nor bad, it's just there, and we're able to take advantage of its benefits. Still, I agree that there are some musicians who brought something new into the world because they either didn't know about those systems which are already in use, or they refused to play by the rules and thus found their own way and were not distracted by the classic ways to learn their instrument. Like, for example, Jeff Healey, who had never the chance to see how the guitar was held properly because he was blind and played the guitar lying on his lap, and so found new ways to play on this instrument. But this is very specific to certain individuals. You never know if the person in front of you will respond to this. They're just very certain specific individuals who will be able to be very creative just because they are not confronted or distracted by this system. It's much more likely that based on the knowledge of past generations and using those systems which have been improved over many decades or even centuries, they can learn much more efficiently and thus be able to gain certain skills and express themselves and bring something new into the world. But of course, the classic music notation system is not always the best because it has so much overhead, so much detail, which is usually not used in pop music. But still we see that you need some kind of system, thus the tabs or the natural number system. But the classic system of drum notation is very easy to learn because you usually always have a drum key which shows you which instrument corresponds with which symbol, and rhythm is just very simple mathematics. You can also check out my tutorial on triplets. I will link it in the description below. In principle, I see it this way. Of course, everyone has one strong channel of perception. One is more the auditory type, can learn well by ear. One is more the visual type. And a third one is more the kinesthetic type, which means that he or she first needs to do something to get the feel of it. But if you know how to read music, you have one additional channel available to you as needed. And this allows you to learn faster, more efficiently, and this will open a few doors for you. For example, there are some exercises or even whole concepts which are very difficult or even impossible to be communicated without using notation. So if you are able to read music, you can unlock this entire world of exercises and books. So if you cannot afford a teacher at the moment, you just take whatever book you want and work through it on your own. Also, you have a much better overview over what you are doing. If you practice a very difficult, very systematic exercise, it's hard to keep track of everything while you are playing. It's much better to see it in front of you on your music stand and use the remaining capacities to listen carefully and compare if what you're playing is exactly what you're supposed to be playing. So you can use the written notation for a target performance comparison and thus keep track of what you're doing. And one of the biggest advantages of all, if you know how to read music and if there is sheet music for a song, you can learn it much more quickly because you see the structure of the song right in front of you. Remember the different channels. You have one more channel. You not just learn it by ear, but also see the structure right in front of you. And if you're very good at sight reading, you don't need to practice at all. If time is short, you can just put it on the music stand and play right along by sight reading. If there is no sheet music and you have to write it out for yourself, the great advantage is that you can keep this sheet music. If you learn songs by ear, after some time you will have forgotten most of it. But the paper you keep, you put it on the music stand. If time is very short, you can fill in with this band again at any time and don't have to practice or rehearse at all. So, if you make music professionally or if you aspire to do so, this is very important. Just like with unlocking this whole world of books, you now unlock this whole world of potential jobs, because there are many jobs and gigs out there where it is required that you are able to sight read or where you have to learn many songs in a very short time. And in this case, it's very important or even just necessary that you are able to write out your own charts. How to learn many songs in a short amount of time and how to write your own charts I will explain in the next episode. In addition, you have the ability to quickly capture ideas. Of course, you could just record yourself, but if you listen to it later again, you still have to analyze what you played again. If you write it down, you see it right in front of you and see exactly what you need to play. Also, you can communicate ideas. With my students, I use this by just coming up with exercises on the spot specifically for them and write them on the whiteboard for them. Or we listen to a song together which we want to play and we analyze it and write down the most important grooves and fills for the song. Also, if you cannot do a show and a friend has to fill in for you, you can help him or her by writing down the most essential parts of what you're playing or even write a whole chart for him or her. The bottom line is this. If you're able to read music, you just have more options. It's just like with learning another language. English is my second language, but by learning it, I have so many more options. I unlock this whole world because now I can read any book which has not been translated into German. I can watch videos. I can give workshops in Germany and abroad, like I did. I can play with any band because we are able to communicate in English. Reading music only kills feeling and creativity if you confuse the paper with the music. Just because you play everything that's on the sheet, that doesn't make it music. Just because every note's in the right place, that doesn't mean that it sounds good. Of course you have to use your ears. Use the notation as an additional input channel to learn and optimize, to communicate and to capture ideas and songs. So it's not either or, reading music or not reading music, but it's just an addition to your toolkit, which is readily available if you need it. And then use those aspects which are beneficial to your instrument, to your way of playing.